Good morning. Continuing our journey in Hemshech Samach Vav. We're on page 53. Finish the top paragraph where the Rebbe Rashab, citing the Alter Rebbe's Maimer from Maimori Admor HaZoken in Yonim, as noted in the footnotes, explaining the inyan of Oir, that all the Giluyim are called Oir, with that dual property, so to speak, that on one hand, Oir is only a reflection, on the other hand, it's coming from the source, and it is only a reflection of the source, nothing else. So it has a type of interface element to it, like the light of the sun, or the energy of the soul, of the spirit. And mipsari echza, from our flesh, meaning from our very beings, we have the example, or it says Yuvanzeh, from Eisis HaMachshava. So Eisis HaMachshava, interesting thought, unlike speech, or definitely action, writing, is on one hand an expression, an inner expression of what's going on within you, but it does have letters and it is an expression. So it is a levush on one hand, but it's a levush hamiyuchad, as he explained at length in the parentheses, and thus can even be considered like Oir and called Oir. That was the main focus in the parentheses at the bottom of page 52 on top of page 53. HaMachshava here is called Oir, even though it's generally called Kalim. And he explained it as we discussed, because it's a levush hamiyuchad, meaning it's a garment that's attached and connected to the light, to the idea, and furthermore to the source of the Oir, like he said in the Etzem and in the Mokir, unlike Dibur, for instance. So all of that allows it to be a type of transparent or seamless channel to the Oir itself, and that's why you can compare it to Oir. And he brought from the Eitz Chaim that is called Oir, then from the Zohar, Migdash Melach, that's level of Atik, sends us to the Pardes. And finally, the last piece that we learned in the last class was the Efshi Yesh Lemer, that just as we say that the Oiris of Atzilus, the Kalim of Atzilus are the Oiris of Biyah, so too the Kalim of a higher level of the Esses Sfiras Agnuzas become the Oiris of Atzilus. And hence, that's why B'chinas Machshava, B'chinas Ha'oir. So it can be both Kalim and Oir, depending whether you're talking about compared to a higher level or compared to a lower level. But the bottom line punchline is what he says after the parentheses on top of page 53, that Eisis HaMachshava are nimshach from Mahus Atzmus HaNefesh, because the Nefesh itself has the power of expression. The Nefesh is filled with letters, as the Arizal says. In the words of the Targum Onkelos, Ruach Mamala, that the spirit, the human being, was created as a communicative and a human that can express himself. And yet, when it's still in the nefesh, it's still in a very sublime level. When it becomes Eisis, it becomes tangible. So there's also a distance between them. It's not made of the same material, but it originates from that source, and hence it's like the mashal of the Ziv, Hashemesh b'mekede, like the light of the sun in its source, which was where it all began when he started talking about light. So now he's going to come back, the new paragraph, and he's going to discuss, okay, so now let's get back to why the Mukabalim use the word Oir to explain for all the levels above. The Giluyim Elyonim are called Oir. So the new paragraph on page 53, the pages can be found at samachvav.com if you want to follow the text. Ubezeh Yuvan, and with this we'll understand Mashikinu kol hisavas tacht me'elyon b'bchinas er v'ziv levad. What they, kinu meaning, it was kinu means they describe all the creations, everything as it is formed or comes into being from one state to a lower state, tachtim elyon. So what term is used in Kabbalah to explain the hishtalshelus, the levels, as one level moves to the next level? It's called b'chinas er v'ziv bolvad. It's called an er v'ziv, only a light and a reflection. The Hainu she'elyon b'chinas moyer legabe atachten. That the elyon is like a moyer like a luminary, like a source of light compared to the lower level. So like the higher levels, like a sun compared to sunlight. So all the levels, as we go from a higher to lower, is moyer oyer, moyer oyer. Obviously, there's only one moyer fundamentally, that's the Eibishter himself. But nevertheless, in the language of oyer, every level is a source, a moyer, legabe atachten. Va'atachten, kemosh le'eviziv levad shala elyon. And the lower level is compared to, is like the example of a light and a reflection, only a light and a reflection of the higher level. It's not a piece of it. It's not a part of it. It's not like we said, ilav olol, we talked about earlier, is yesh mi yesh, like a shefa, where something is imparted from one level to the next. When it comes to light, nothing is imparted. It's merely a reflection of the higher level. And he's continuing to explain it. Shema atzmus ha'elyon hu nimshach b'sharshei. So the lower level, which is a reflection, does come from Atzmus Elyon. It's coming from the source, the higher source. Hu nimshach b'sharshei, that's where it comes from, its root. Aval hu mahus achar, but it becomes a different personality. It's not like the etzem itself. It's not like a piece of the etzem has been transferred over to the next level. It's a mahus achar, a different mahus. Kishen v'nimshach b'kach, when it extends and expresses, when it extends and transmits, it's not of the same mahus, even though it's coming from there, because where does light come from? Sunlight comes from the sun, but it's not the sun itself, as we discussed earlier. I see in the footnote, they note that the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, the word mahus achar, the Alter Rebbe uses the term, footnote 76, nifred min ha'elyon. The Alter Rebbe uses the expression separate from the higher level. The Rebbe Rashab doesn't use the word nifred, he used the word mahus achar, which has been the terms he's been using earlier as well. Mahus le'mahus, or not mahus le'mahus. The example I gave earlier, a few classes back, was the difference between a child that's from the very mahus, the DNA of the seed and the egg of its parents. The very genetic makeup. It's not ha'ara alone. A student from a teacher is ha'ara, because the teacher doesn't give him the brain, the very DNA, the very genetic makeup of the brain, but the teacher does teach him the information. So information is ha'ara of seichel. It's not the seichel itself. If the student didn't have a mind, no matter how brilliant the teacher, you couldn't place a mind inside of a student. A Kopf kann nicht aufstellen is an expression. You can't give someone a head. But once they have a mind, you can then inform it and educate it. Only an example. It's not exact example, because seichel does come from the etzem of the teacher, but it's still not the etzem itself. So, in that sense, there you have why they're using the word oyer, because that's the whole point. You want to show how in Seder Ishtalshalos, every level, on one hand, is coming from a higher level, but it's a leap, because it's not from that very mahus, which is what allows and explains how existence can form and shape from something that's non-existent. Yesh ma'ayin, basically. Why? Because it's taka different mahus. It's coming like a reflection, not as a piece of it. If it was a piece, then existence would always remain divine and wouldn't be able to become a yesh in a way. He doesn't say this explicitly, but it's one of the reasons that, one of the ways you can explain how you can have a leap while you're also moving from one level to the next. V'yesh leimer, okay, that's the first three lines he says here, which I believe is also almost word for word from the Alter Rebbe's Maimer.
Why does he say nimshach besharsho instead of nimshach mesharsho?
That's the expression, I guess, in the Alter Rebbe's Maimer. I don't think it means differently. I don't think he means something differently. Okay. Sometimes the words are used certain ways. I don't know if there's a diuk in that.
Okay, thank you.
You could say bisharshe, the root of the oir. He's not talking about the root. He's not talking about the root itself. He's talking bisharshe, that it's in its root. It comes from atzmus, meaning from the moir. That's how I would translate it.
Thank you.
Like he's saying, B'sharshe hu nimshach ma'atzmus ha'elyon. Just reverse the order.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Now comes a parenthesis. Let's see how long this parenthesis is. Well, it doesn't look so short, actually, or is it? Where's the end of the parentheses?
It's about 15 lines down.
Oh, yeah, okay. By the Dibra Maspot Center Eno, right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's read the parentheses, even though last time I skipped the parentheses just for the flow. But here, let's see if it works. If it gets too confusing or too distracting, I'll just move to after the parentheses and then go back. Because you see, sometimes it's easier to learn it that way. Anyway, the parentheses goes like this. V'yesh leimer. So here again, you see the Rebbe Rashab is explaining the mimer of the Alter Rebbe. That's how these parentheses should be understood. He's taking the subject, the Alter Rebbe, like before he was explaining it with the Alter Rebbe, is comparing machshava, letters of thought, to Now he's going to explain what this last three lines means. V'yesh leimer dahakavonahu. We could say that the intention here in this mimer, because you see right away, if we didn't know it's the Alter Rebbe's mimer, you right away say, what do you mean yesh leimer? He's saying a yesh leimer on himself, his kavanah. So it makes a lot more sense that he's referring to a mimer that was said before the Rebbe Rashab. And he's explaining what is the kavanah in that mimer. I'm just giving a little hint that when you find in Chassidus such a type of parentheses, and the Rebbe Rashab has it quite often, Samach Tzedek has it quite often, where they're quoting something from a different mimer, earlier mimer, and then they're explaining what is its intention. It's like a pshat in the original mimer. So he says, "Yeshlema the kavona." We can say the intention here is this: the kavona hu kisha'er mislabish ba'keli. That he's referring now to the as it manifests and gets enclosed in the container. Because remember, itself can be also an that's higher than a keli. We're not talking about moyer. The moyer is the source, the sunlight, the sun, in the example of a sun. And then there's light. But the question is, what level of light are we talking about here? Is it the light, pure light, that's coming from the source? Like you can say, Atzilus is an that comes from a higher level. But are we talking about the Eiris in the Kalim? So he says, Yeshlema, the intention is the Eir in the Kali. The Ozu b'bchinas mahus nifred. That's when it becomes a mahus nifred. Now, interestingly, now he's using the word nifred. Before he didn't use the word nifred. Even though the Alter Rebbe used the word nifred min ha'elyon, when the Rebbe Rashab cited it, he changed it to mahus achar, which is really similar. Mahus achar means a different personality, but nifred is obviously stronger when you say it's separate. And now he's using the word nifred, so you see that he wants to be medayik in the Alter Rebbe's word, but he wants to explain it. Because when you say nifred and an oir, it seems that would be a problem. Because oir never gets separate from the source. You could say it's a different mahus, absolutely. Light is not made of the same matter as the sun itself. There's light within the sun, but the sun has all kinds of properties that the light does not have. That's what makes it a sun and not light. So when you say nifred, when you say Chassidus says, me'ein hamoir, the never separates from the source. If you take away the source, the light disappears. He actually said that explicitly earlier. So what does Alter Rebbe mean, nifred min ha'elyon? So if you just read the Alter Rebbe, that'd be a question. So I'm now suggesting that maybe the Rebbe Rashab, it was margish this issue, he sensed this, and that's why in his parentheses he's using the word nifred, because now we can explain it, because it's the that manifests in the keli. Let's continue reading to understand it, but that's what he's saying. That's why you could say he's then a mahus nifred, not just a mahus achar. It's a separate mahus. The intention here doesn't mean pirud as in, usually we say separate from. Like we talk about existence feels separate from God. That's not spoken about in a positive way. Obviously there's a purpose in the yesh feeling separate, but Pirud is the opposite of Achdus. Achdus is unity, is symmetry, is seamlessness, is connection. Nifrad is considered a negative thing. Like in the Megillah, we'll read in Purim, where he says, "Am echad mefuzar u'mefeirad." When Haman is inciting against the Jews, he says it's a nation that is mefuzar, spread, and mefeirad, and separate. So pirud is not considered a positive thing. So he's saying, so that kavana here doesn't mean pirud chaz v'shalom. The Alter Rebbe is not meaning when he says nifrid, or what he calls mahus nifrid. Mahus achar. That's what he means by nifrid here. Not as in separate, as it separated itself from its source, because light never gets separated from its source. It always remains a connected to the source. That's the whole point. That's the whole feature of light. It's not like a yesh. A yesh, like an ilava alul, cause and effect. Yeah, you can be mamshich something into another thing, and it's not an extension. Like, for example, if you pour water from a pitcher into a cup, then it's different. The pitcher could be removed, and the cup is given to someone to drink from. The water doesn't. The water in the cup doesn't have to remain connected to the water in the pitcher. When it comes to light, if you did that, there'd be no sunlight. If you blocked the sun and did not allow the sun to, if you disconnected the light from the sun, so that's not what he means in Nifrid. He means mahus achar. And that's why the Rebbe Rashab changed the word to mahus achar, to really explain what he means by the word nifrid. So why does he use the word nifrid? Because nifrid in Hebrew could mean taka separate in a negative way, but nifrid could also emphasize it's separate because its personality is different. And that's what he means by separate. So in an interesting way, talk about interface, that's the interface. That on one hand, light did separate from the source, on the other hand, it didn't separate. Because it remains connected, but it's separate in its personality. Light is not the source. It's of a different. It's made up of different matter, so to speak, or different energy.
Can you take your question?
Not in the middle of the sentence. Let me continue reading till I want to get the whole topic here. Let me just see, or maybe this is a topic. Let me just see if we can stop here. 1 second. Who? Oh, okay. So now he's going to explain what he meant, why he's emphasizing that it's a within a keli. But that's how he began the parenthesis. The kavana is nekeli. So he's going to explain there's different levels in which of course makes sense. Even though in the mimer, the original mimer, he's just talking about in general coming from the source. But we can already extrapolate there are levels, because even in machshava we spoke about levels. The way machshava is in the source, and there's no real tangible letters yet. And then when it starts forming letters, and then of course those letters will become more tangible in speech, and so on. So he's going to be explaining now the gradations of how light moves from the source. And with that, explain what level exactly, or best as best possible, what level we're talking about when we say that the v'ziv is muhus achar. Once it extends, once it expresses itself, once it transmits. I'll stop here for questions if you want.
So my question was, when it says mahus nifrad, I would think because it's coming to modify ksha or mislabish keli, that is to say that once the or goes into the keli, that's when it becomes a separate type or nature. It's not just that it's mishtashela. For sure, it's different because
that's what he's going to be explaining. That's the whole point of the parentheses.
Yeah. Okay.
He's going to be explaining that right now. That's the next section. He's going to
but I thought you were saying, just because it was mishtashela that it was a mahus nifrad, but it's not.
He just said it. He said the nekeli, and he explained that it's mahus achva inyanhu. Now he's going to explain what he means by that.
Okay. Okay.
Va'inyanhu, like it says elsewhere, the Be'edis says Gimel Madregas. Then Eidis, there are 3 levels. The elsewhere he sees Teres Chaim, and then later in Samach Vav as well. Okay. Ha'echad, the first level in Eidis. Kamoishe including b'matzilom. How the air is encompassed and absorbed within its emanator. Maitzil here is like the ma'ir, the source. So the first level of air is how it's still within its source, in its b'matzilon, as in the emanator. Atzilus is the emanation, and the netzalim are the emanations. So essentially, there's a maitzil. When you talk in the language of Atzilus, who's going to emanate? There's the oyer within that maitzil. Shalzen namar, on this first level, we say, Antu chad v'lei b'chushban. You are one, but not a measurable one. What does that mean? It's one. So there's already chad, there's a level of chad, but you can't yet measure it because it's still all within the source. Ubchinas habeis, then he says the second level in Eiris, Ubchinas yiridas ha'er ma'atzmusei lislabish b'kelim. That the air is now descending and lowering itself from atzmusei, from the core, to manifest in kelim. In the first level, it's still all in the core, in the maitzil. Now it's manifesting. Very likely, atzmusei and matzilan are synonymous. It appears, at least to me, when he says it, even though it's a different word. You can say atzmus is higher, atzmusei is higher than matzilan, but for practical purposes, the second level is now the air is descending. He calls it klor yerida. Lislabish b'kelim. So the air
I
is
thought
going
they're
through.
the same level. The
So the
difference
air
in
is
the
going
fall,
through
you don't
a
feel it.
One second. The air is going through a shtalshalus, a yerida, now to manifest in the kelim. Shalzel Omar, and what expression did we use to define this level? So on this he says, B'Sefer Yetzirah, Eses Sfiras B'li Ma. Before we spoke about Chad, the Lei B'Chushban. Now he's saying it's called 10 spheres, but B'li Ma, without substance. That's what the Sefer Yetzirah, how the Sefer Yetzirah describes as 10 spheres on that level. So it's 10 spheres, so something is already now turned into 10, but it's still without substance. Shadayim hem b'chinas bli ma. There's still bli ma, without substance. Bli muhus. He's teaching ma as in muhus. Muhus means it's still an extension of, still an expression of its source. It doesn't have yet a so-called, I don't want to use the word independent, but basically its own personality. Or personality altogether, I should say, not just its own personality. And then comes the third level. Ubchinas hagimel. What is the third level? Hu kishemislabish ha'er b'kelim. The second level, he didn't say it actually manifested in kelim. The air is being prepared and primed to enter into a keli, into the kelim. And the third level, when it actually enters into the kelim. The ozu b'chinas muhus chachma. Then it becomes, the Eir HaChachma is now become Muchus Chachma. Because the Eir is going inside the Keli, and that's what the whole point is, that should have an identifiable personality called Chachma, and then a personality called Bina. It's still Eir, meaning it's still the divine wisdom, divine Chachma, and divine Bina and so on, but it's now has the word Chachma as a definition. Bli Ma means 10 spheres, but without substance. You can't yet call it Chachma. The example I've given very often for this, again, is the development of a fetus, where in the early stages of the gestation, the first trimester, for example, you have one cell at the moment of conception, but even when the cells split, you still don't see Chachma Bina, you don't see a brain or a heart. That takes a while, a few months until you start seeing the development, but it's all within there. But it's not yet, you can't yet call it a mahus. It's still all part of the original cell of that was conceived. It's just an example, obviously, because in a child, we're not talking about Eir there we're talking about Eiris and Kalim, but the point being is that there are stages how the Eir moves from, again, level 1 where it's encompassed in the source, level 2 it's already descending and preparing itself to enter into Keli. So it's sfiris, but bli ma. It's a sfiris bli ma, And now we're talking about the Muhus HaChochma, it's actually entered into the Eir B'Kelim. Then it's Oz B'chinas Muhus Chochma, the Chesed, and Chesed, just as examples, Chochma, Chesed. So now we're talking about operative attributes, whether it's Chochma or Chesed. In the human being, we also have these levels. There's how the Keiches are encompassed, the faculties within the Nefesh. Like he spoke before, the letters as they are in the Nefesh, they're not no actual letters yet. Then there's a second level where they start developing and being prepared to enter that level. And then there's a actually manifest within Kalim, within letters or within some form of expression. And the Rebbe Rashab adds now some more. Says, like it says elsewhere, that Kalim is Gvanei Ha'er. He gives a way to explain it. He says the Kalim are like the colors of the light. So we know light in its source is white. If you don't have a prism, you don't have something that bends the light, it's white. But we know there's also colors in the light. So he's saying that the Kalim are compared to the colors in the light. She'esim geven v'teyad b'ha'ir. They form and shape a color and shape to the light. So the light itself can be pure white light, colorless, shapeless, but the Kalim give it color and shape. So the Keli affects the Ur. So the Ur that is in the Keli is a different level than the Ur that's higher than the Keli, and definitely the first level of the Ur as they are in their source. The Ur says they are in their source. And he's telling us to look elsewhere. In the Maimed Sena Ren of the year Tofrei Samach, that would be 6 years earlier from the Rebbe Rashab. The footnote, they tell us what page, where he discusses this topic. Now, the Rebbe Rashab is going to take these three levels, and now we're going to apply them to our discussion here. What's what? When we say that it's a mahus achar, the Ur is a mahus achar. Once it extends from its root, from its source, he said right away that's the Ur as its kavana mislabish ba'kli. So now he's going to explain based on these three levels he's going to place what level is where. And here's what he says. And then I'll take questions after we finish the parentheses. Another four lines. On this second level that we just described, which is not the energies within the source, within the mitzel, within the emanator, but the energy is a state of yirida. Esa spheres bli ma. So it's not yet in the keli, but it's being prepared, like he says. It's already descended a level in order to be ready to manifest within the kelim. Esa spheres bli ma. He says this level yesh leimer shehu kamei b'chinas lavush. That's like the level of a lavush, of a garment. She'ima yeh she'enim hus achar. Even though it's not a mahus achar, like we learned before, that the levushim meneu bei, like the levush of machshava, is not a mahus achar, it's an extension of the light. He said that clearly. Avalhu be'ein areich ela etzem. But it's still, on the other hand, be'ein areich, infinitely distant in comparison to the etzem. Liyeshe b'chinas ha'or levad, because it's only a reflection. So on one hand, it's not a mahus achar from the source. That will happen in the third level, as he's going to explain. In the second level, he's calling it this level called levush. Oid as a levush, that is not a mahus achar, but it's still not the etzem. The mishum zeh hu kelevush yachshav. That's why it considered like a levush, like the Alter Rebbe used that lashon. At shenechshav kamei levush levad. If you look on page 52, 7 lines from the end of the first paragraph, he used the expression "Einem erech etzem acha nechshav kamei levush levad legabe etzem." But nevertheless, it's not an actual garment like a jacket. He said levushe minei ubei kadein kamtzed levushe minei ubei. So it has both elements to it. Aber b'chinas gvanei ha'oir. But now we're talking one level lower, the colors of the light, shenasim ba'oir al yedei ha'kelim, which are shaped and formed in the light in the oir through kelim. One classic example for that is when you take, let's say, colorless liquid, water, and you put it into colored, tinted test tubes or bottles, so then the water will take on the color of blue or green or whatever the test tube is color. Even though the water remains colorless, but the keli gives it that color. So when you look at it, it looks blue. Or even if you were to say that you're actually dyeing the water, in other words, you're coloring the water, it's still not, the etzem of the water is still colorless. But something else has added, a mahus acher has come into play. So in other words, the kelim have now given a color to the light. He says, Yesh leimer, shezeu kehumus acher nifred min ha'etzem. That's the level we're talking about here. That's a level where it's already a mahus acher. In the second level, it's not a mahus acher, it's still the light. However, it's not in the etzem anymore. So therefore, you call it eses fridas, but it's still bli ma, bli mahus. Doesn't have a mahus. Now it's gotten the kelim have given it the mahus, a personality, a definition, which is nifred min ha'etzem, and that's what means nifred here. Not nifred as separate, but nifred as different. Meaning separate, it's no longer the way it is in its pure, undiluted form, as it is in level 2 and definitely in level 1. Because in the etzem, this concept of a color or any definition is not shaykh altogether. So clearly it's a completely new thing that has happened here. It's still light. It's still oir. That's why we still call it oir. But what is now assumed, properties that are muhus acher and nifred min ha'etzem. So now we explain both the words muhus acher and nifred min ha'etzem. He's telling us again to look at that maimed Sena Rena. Clearly there's something there that will help explain this, because he already referred to it twice in the last few lines. And with that he concludes the parentheses, which all came to explain what level are we talking about when we say that the is nimshach misharshe avlu muhus acher kishin spasher v'nimshach bekach. But it's a mahus acher. And the words of the Alter Rebbe, nifred mina elyon. And maybe that's why they, correctly so, they put it into the footnote to show us that it's actually the Alter Rebbe's lashon, the word nifred mina elyon. And that's the parentheses. Okay. Any questions? All clear? Okay, good. Now we go back to the text before the parentheses. Even though it became a mahus achad, what he calls now nifred, as you just explained, because you're talking about the oir, as it is manifest inside the containers, which also important to emphasize before I continue. Till now, we haven't made this distinction. I mean, he hinted to it before when he spoke about machshava. There's the letters of machshava compared to the way the machshava is, the letters, how they're rooted in the etzem nefesh. But now he's really spelled it out. So when we're talking about here, this when the Kabbalim use the word on the Gilui Milyenim b'shem Oir, because Oir has these dual properties, he's now pointed out that it's different levels in Oir itself. It's not just one level. That Oir itself has different levels. So when you learn the Maimer itself from the Alter Rebbe, you wouldn't necessarily know about these three levels. But the Rebbe Rashab is making it clear that it is connected to those three levels. And mahus achar or nifrid is the key word, the operative word that really reveals that factor. Had he not said mahus achar, I just want to see in the previous page if he used that word at all. Oir is a reflection. Ein mahus va'atzmus hashemesh. He did say those words. Only oir v'ziv, like a levush. Ein me'erech ha'etzem. So he did use the words that a levusha adam is nifrid completely, it's separate completely, like we said, a jacket or another garment that you can separate. Whereas here it's mineu bey. Okay, good. So when you look at it now, everything becomes a lot clearer what level we're talking about, because there are different levels of connection here. Now, I wouldn't go as far and say that the third level is like a levush that's separate from the body, like in other words, like a jacket. So he doesn't say that, because you can't say that really on oir, even on the third level of oir. And he doesn't say that. He just uses the word muhus achar and nifrid, and uses the word levush on the second level that it's minei bay. But again, I don't know if I would go that far and say that third level is like a separate levush completely. But maybe yes. That's something we can talk about or speculate. I'm not positive about that.
Well, is it something that's still connected?
What?
Is it something that's still connected to the Ma'or?
Oir is always connected to the Ma'or. That's why
so that's what I'm saying. That's why we can't say it's not connected.
But you could maybe say that the effect of the kalim that adds a color to the light, maybe that color in the light creates a certain nifrid, something that's not quite there. It would be like, for example, let's say take the shell of a snail or a turtle, and let's say you painted it. You painted it blue. So the shell itself is part of the snail, but the color blue is not really its natural color. So that's how I'm thinking. But he doesn't say all this explicitly.
Yeah, I hear.
So the bottom line is it's fine, because at the end of the day, the whole point is interfacing between a higher level of godliness into the structure of existence. So the color is more the structure. The oir as oir is more the divine, but a oir and a keli, clearly the oir is relates more like a mamal kalam and relates more to the kalim than the oir that's higher than the kalim. So at the end of the day, these levels definitely apply. I just said whether you can actually call it like a lavush nifrit. Like, for example, can you call the third level dibur, like words of speech, in contrast to words of thought, which would be like the letters of thought, rather, that would be maybe level 2. So I'm saying this is something we can discuss. And you could go both, you could make an argument either way, and perhaps there is elements of it. That's all I'm just throwing out there, because you could say, listen, letters of speech, even though they are a levush nifrit compared to thought, but it's still, you're speaking. If you stop speaking, the words stop flowing. It's just that the words now have tangible, in writing, for example, there the letters completely are separate, because once you write it down, it's there forever, even whether you're there or not there. So it all comes down to relative relationships between how much of the source is manifesting and how much of the kalim, of the structure, is manifesting. And you really want to join the two. At the end of the day, all this is coming to explain how we connect to Ratzon Elyon, remember, Pnimis HaRatzon with mitzvahs. We'll see where that goes, but he's still in the middle of the discussion. So when you think of it in the bigger picture, all of these levels all help us in the interface. Basically, it comes down to, in practical terms, that God is giving us stepping stones, how to move from a world of structure to a world beyond structure. Basically, from the world of gvul, of existence, and all its finite parameters that we're learning about, kalim, all the way to oir and higher levels of oir and higher levels. That's ultimately what the purpose of all of this is. Yeah. Va'afa pikein, now he continues. And even though Taka became a mahus achar, what he calls now also nifred min ha'etzem, when the Ur has come down lower to the third level in the Kalim, or what he called before the parentheses, Muhus achas shenispas min nimshah b'kach, aval b'kein hoyel achadim mamish. It's still completely one, because the light, even when it enters the Keli, still is one with the source. Shebeistalek hamoker, and he brings here exactly what I pointed out earlier. Because you remove the source of light, yistalek haziv. Automatically, the reflection ceases to be as well. There's no separation, really. So the Earth has assumed properties that are not of the same personality, the Mahus of the Etzem. But to say that it's disconnected from the Etzem, absolutely not. Remove the Etzem, remove the source of light, and Yistalik, immediately the light will also disappear. Whereas in Ishtalshus, when it's actually Mahus to Mahus, one identity to another identity, not Ur, not a reflection. Like we said before, Ilav Olol, or actually one piece is transferred over to another piece, not like we speak, Mahus Mahus. Then you remove the first Mahus, the second Mahus will remain. As I said, in any example, you take a piece of something, you cut a piece of wood off a tree, even if the tree is not there, that wood remains. You take water from a pitcher or from a wellspring, the water is an identity, is a separate entity, even though it originated from its source. And the same thing with everything that's Mahus l'Mahus. And here, Hanal. So this Maimer also seems to be very fundamental because he referred to it already, I think, 4 times. The Kol Ha'am Roim is the Maimer from Tafrei Samach, which he referred to earlier. End of the paragraph in the previous page and a few other times. It's all in the footnotes if you want to follow up. Okay. Let me stop. Any questions? Okay. And now he's tying it all together here. And in this manner that we've been discussing all of this, is in all the structures that evolve one from the other. He's talking now in Ishtalshlus. Now the word parsuf literally means face, but it's used in Kabbalah as a structure. There's a thing called the Kuda Sfira Parsuf. You may see that around in different places. The Kuda means a point, obviously. Sfira is a full Sfira, Chochma, Bina. A Parsuf is like Chochma, Bina, Das is a Parsuf. Because it isn't one feature, it's like a face. What's a face? A face has eyes, a nose, a mouth, and so on. So basically a Parsuf is a combination of spheres. A sphere is in each individual sphere, and a Nekuda is one point in the sphere itself. The point that everything starts with a point. So Parsuf is a general term. When you say the Parsufim, he means the structures. That's a good way to define it. The structures of Ishtalshus. There's Eilamis, and Eilam is a bunch of Parsufim. Like for example, Eilam Atzilus has the Parsuf of Keser, there's the Parsuf of Moichin, there's the Parsuf of Zah, Parsuf of Malchus. There's different Parsufim. That's an Eilam. So it's basically different terms of, it's a combination of different elements. So Kol Parsufim Ishtalshum Zeh Mezeh, U'Kamayel Derech Moshla Midas. Let's take the midas of the person, or of the Eilamis. Midas are the emotions, the feelings. Technically, it's chesed through malchus usually. Or sometimes chesed through yesod. It's either 6 or 7. The 7 midas. Chesed, gvura, teferes, netzach, ched, yesod, malchus. Like the 7 midas, the 7 weeks of Sfira Seimer, where we mavar everything from chesed, sheba chesed, to malchus, sheba malchus. Hagam she'em b'chinas moir, umuhus. Legabe koyach hamachshava, hanimshech mehem. Even though compared to thought, which is already a levush, that's, as we said, thought is an expression of midas. The thought of love, let's say. You're thinking about love. But the koyach itself of chesed, of love, or ava, is a koyach. You may not be thinking about it. It may not be in your active machshava. It's in your memory banks, like I said, like we spoke. It's on your hard drive. So he says, so even though compared to chachma, koyach machshava rather, which nimshech mehem, which extends from the midas. The midas themselves are a moir umuhus, meaning a source, and a muhus, a personality that's above the level of machshava, of koyach. Nevertheless, midas compared to their source, which is bina, as he's going to say, are only a reflection and a light that extends from their source. What's their source? Shahu koyach habina hanikre eim habonim. The koyach habina is the power of contemplation, comprehension, I should say, which is called eim habonim, the mother of the children. Who are the children? The midas. The midas are born from a contemplation when the mind contemplates his bonanus, like he explains in Tanya, many places. So you contemplate on something, or as the Rambam says, how does someone come to love and revere God? By Kishamiz he contemplates on the greatness of the divine. So the Bina gives birth to the Midas. Machshava is an expression of the Midas in an active thought. It could also be dibur, you can express through words of love, or words of reverence, and so on. So even though, compared to Machshava, the Midas are a moir and a muhus, but compared to their source, it's only a ha'ara naziv, only a reflection. This extends from their source, which is what? Is bina, eim habonim. That's, he gave the example. This is now the way it is in human beings. He didn't speak about how it is in the spheres above. By us, that's how it works. So we have bina, mides, machshav. That's how it is also above, meaning in the divine levels. The parts of Zah, the structure of Zah is the mides, Zah, Zohar Ampin. It's only a reflection from the level of bina. So Zah Vatzilus is only a reflection of bina Vatzilus. V'chein chachma bina legabe keser. Like he said, all the partsufim. And the same, it works all the way up. Chachma bina compared to keser. Same idea, it's a reflection. U'kamoy kein ha-keser legabe atzmus ein sof. And so too keser compared to atzmus ein sof, which is higher than keser. They all, in their level, compared to lower, they're like a source. But compared to higher, they're a reflection. And that's how the whole Shtalshlus works. All the Giluyim are called Ur. Like he said, Ur HaChochma, Ur HaKeser, Ur HaBina, Ur HaMides. So it's Ur on one hand. Compared to lower levels, it's like a moyer, it's like a source. But compared to higher level, it's only a reflection. Ukamay HaRotzen. And Rotzen is synonymous with Keser. So even Rotzen, which compared to lower levels is a very powerful force, but compared to Hus v'atzmus hanefesh, it's only Aispashtus and Ziv. When you say I want something, the desire is not the etzem itself. It's what the etzem wants, but it's already an expression compared to the Mahus atzmus hanefesh. So that ties up together everything we've been learning, how all these levels are all called Ur. No matter how, even the highest levels as we go all the way up, up, up. There you see, something can be called an atzmi, etzem, but it's only etzem relative to that which is below it. Now where this is all going, we haven't finished yet. The next paragraph, I'm going to stop here, but the next paragraph, page 54, he's going to go to the next paragraph and continue this discussion and is going to break it into he's going to go back to the 3 levels, I believe. And then he's going to bring it back to Ratzon in the context of the Ratzon Hashem that we connect with through mitzvahs. So even though right now Ratzon is not Etzem based on what he just said here, but still, we're going to learn how Ratzon connects with the Etzem, because remember, the Oyer, even the lower levels of Oyer, are still one, Lachad Mamish, with their source. As much as they manifest downward, meaning into the structure and become a Mahus, even the 3rd lowest level is still light. It's still energy and it's still connected to the source. But we have to be patient. He hasn't finished yet. He's still developing it. I think Ratzon is going to get back to in the 2 more pages as we move along. But I'm going to stop here. Here's a good place to stop. It's the end of a paragraph, end of a page. But let's take questions if anybody wants to ask anything, to clarify anything.
I don't have a question, just want to understand. When in the beginning of the parentheses, is that like if somebody has a machshava and he gives it over to somebody else, and now it's sitting within that person's head, and that's a separate. There's an oil, right, from the person's thought.
I hear
it over,
what you're asking.
And then how he sees it is his filter, his color.
That's a very Balabatisha way. I think he means here, even within the person himself, the teacher, there's, let's say, an idea that's still not yet manifest in words. So when the teacher already has the idea formulated in his mind, that could also be Eir in a Keli. What you're saying is for sure, because it's already going into the Kelim of the Makabel, of the student. But I'm saying that these 3 levels that he described could also be referred to in the teacher himself. There's how the teacher is still, the idea is still so amorphous, it's all in his source, it's in his mind somewhere, but he hasn't at all found any form of structure for it. The next step would be, like Esesphere's Bli Ma, that it's already he's preparing himself to prepare, let's say, a shir, a class. And the third would be where he knows exactly what he's going to be saying, Eris and Kalim, in his own Kalim, as in the teacher's Kalim, which would be either Osius or example, a full defined structure of a class or a lecture that he's going to give. That's how I would probably explain it more. But that doesn't preclude the fact that, yes, would include also the going into the Keli of a student, of a Makabel. That's the way I would just qualify that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. But bottom line is, it's in every process you're going to get through all these stages. Anyone that does something in an organized and efficient manner is always going to start from something we'll call it a very amorphous, nebulous state that's nothing is defined yet, even though it's the source of everything. Then that is going to start becoming defined more and more with a bli ma first, without a mahuz, but still esesphiris. And then the third step when it starts becoming defined with colors and shape and form. So it's really 3 stages of any development from, as I said, from the abstract to the tangible, ultimately, if you want to put it in broader terms. And the key thing to remember is that even when it gets to the lower state, it still retains and maintains the integrity of its source. However, it's now with add-ons. There's, like in this case, colors or shape, form, however you apply that. But you can apply this to a business plan, you could apply it to a lecture, to writing a book, to writing an article. You always need these stages in any process. I mentioned the example of gestation of pregnancy. It starts with one cell that's very completely shapeless, and then it splits and splits further and further till it develops into a full child, and after 9 months. And the truth is everything. A seed that grows into a tree, an idea that becomes a big, elaborate, comprehensive plan, a concept, a spark that turns in, fleshed out, a spark of chachma that becomes bina, and then a full-bodied entity. Everything you're going to find these levels. just to make this more, I guess, palatable. Okay. Are there any other questions before? So we'll finish bottom of page 53, end of a paragraph. Good place to stop right now until the next class. Are we having a class tomorrow? Is Purim?
Maybe we should skip. No?
It all depends on the class. I'm able to do it. It's up to you guys. We could skip tomorrow. What everybody wants. Is there a consensus here?
I'm all for it. Whatever you guys decide, that's fine with me, but I'm all for it.
I'm for this year.
Okay. Let's do it.
We'll do it. Those that can't make it will be recorded. It'll be saved. Since I could do it, let's do it. Why not? Okay. Let me just see. Okay, so we'll stop here, bottom of page 53.
Can I ask you a real quick question? It's not so quick.
Before the stopping or you want me to wait?
I'll ask a question and let you decide, and you may say that's way off track. We'll deal with that way later.
Okay, what is the question?
And I recognize this may be way off track, but when we talk about a neshama coming into the goof, I mean, that is the final descension of divine ore into a keli. But do these same principles call them principles of transmission, separate but still part of the same, still hold true? Or because the neshama is a separate nivra, if you will, or it's not the same somehow as this.
There's certain principles. There are definitely certain principles that you could derive from here, but it's discussed in place of Chassidus. We say every morning, Neshama shenasata bi taharihi, ata varasa, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi, ata meshamra bikirbi. So you see right away that Neshama is going through a journey from tahira to ata barasa, yitzarta, nefachta, meshamra bikirbi. So the neshama goes through stages. Whether you could apply these three, Chassidus talks at length the different stages how neshama. So I wouldn't talk about a neshama right here because he's not talking about a per se neshama. But are there parallels? Of course, there are parallels. As the neshama becomes more connected to the body, it becomes more defined in a way. But there are levels of the neshama that always remain above the kelim, so to speak. If that's what you ask.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I meant. So in some ways,
so the Chassidus talks about this at length.
Okay.
In Ayin Beis, we had a whole part he talked about how the neshama goes through the different stages and what part of it is affected by the body. If you remember, what part is not affected.
Yes.
So mimikri aguf, how the soul experience the experiences of the body or not.
But
that's all different stages.
The neshama
Yeah,
is
but
exactly like the
this
oil.
is Chassidus. What you're talking now is literally hundreds of pages in different places that discuss at length. Here he's talking about
Yes, I understand.
But the similar principles can be applied to the of the neshama too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but could be that the neshama is completely a different category, like you said.
It is.
That's why I asked the question. Yeah.
It is, of course it is. The neshama is not just Ein Sof going through the levels, but the neshama has a parallel journey that has a lot of similarities. That's the main point.
Right, that's why I asked the question. Thank you.